My sister banned me from attending her wedding because she believed her fiancé was secretly in love with me, but now he refuses to marry her after witnessing how toxic and cruelly I was treated by my own family. My sister prohibited me from attending her wedding, alleging her fiancé harbored feelings for me. Currently, he's refusing to marry her over this very issue. Hello everyone, I'm Michelle, 20 years old, and I would genuinely appreciate your thoughts. Emily, who is 25, is my older sister, and she was set to marry Jonathan, also 25. Their relationship seemed perfectly aligned. We all believed they were meant to be, having been together for many years. However, circumstances have taken a truly strange and unexpected turn, putting their upcoming wedding in jeopardy.
Why?
My sister won't allow me to be there, which has led Jonathan to decline marrying her. Moreover, Emily believes Jonathan has developed feelings for me. I realize how bizarre this sounds, but let me elaborate. To provide some context, I don't maintain a close connection with either my parents or my sister. I gradually grew apart from them once I began university, though no significant event caused a complete separation. Since moving away from my studies, I haven't spent much time at home. During breaks, like spring holidays, I would typically travel or visit my grandparents rather than returning there. Frankly, it felt like a preferable choice to dealing with the discomfort I experienced at home. The core issue is that I am fundamentally different from my sister and parents, if that makes sense. We've simply never truly connected. I'm not genuinely part of their world, which is exclusively theirs. They never seemed to grasp who I was, and honestly, they never made an effort to try. Growing up, they would always bond over topics that held no interest for me, and it felt as if I were speaking a foreign language whenever I brought up my own passions. They would merely listen, nod, then steer the conversation back to their own concerns. After a while, I stopped attempting. But here's what truly stings. They made no effort to reach out as I began to distance myself. They appeared quite content with my withdrawal from their lives, almost as if they were pleased to see me go. Honestly, that stung. Family members should notice when one of their own is slowly drifting away, but they showed no concern. It merely reinforced my long-held conviction that I didn't belong with them. Eventually, I only visited them for significant events like birthdays and holidays. Even then, I still felt more like a guest in their lives. I would arrive, handle the necessary family interactions, and then leave. Our conversations were always polite but shallow. There was no authentic bond, no real warmth. Furthermore, Emily and I never shared the deep sisterly connection many siblings do. She was always the family's cherished child, the one who excelled at everything, followed the path my parents desired, and integrated seamlessly. I was the unconventional one, the outlier. They aren't inherently malicious people, but their subtle ways of undermining me reveal they can be rather unkind. You know how certain minor remarks can have a profound effect, despite appearing harmless initially? Yes, I often experienced that. I eventually concluded that it was simply best to avoid them as much as possible. Why willingly place yourself in an uncomfortable and out-of-place situation? The complication arose when Jonathan joined us for Christmas dinner last year. For the first time in an exceptionally long time, I didn't feel entirely invisible. My family possesses a knack for making me feel like an outsider in my own home, as if I don't belong. Jonathan, however, didn't treat me that way. Instead of viewing me as the peculiar outlier I often felt around my family, he was genuinely kind and spoke to me like any other individual. I didn't think much of it initially. It was simply basic courtesy, after all. Yet, Emily seemed deeply bothered by this, for some unknown reason. It wasn't as if Jonathan and I were engaged in some profound private discussion. We simply talked about various subjects, including travel, university, amusing work stories, and other everyday topics. Nevertheless, Emily immediately seemed uneasy about it. I attempted to disregard the cold stares she kept directing my way during supper. That is, until she confronted me directly later that evening. I'll never forget her words. She pulled me aside and declared, "I know what you're doing. You're trying to steal my boyfriend, even though you've always been jealous of me." Honestly, I was dumbfounded. Steal her man? I mean, where did that even come from? She refused to drop it, even after I told her she was being absurd and laughed it off. She insisted I was being overly friendly with Jonathan and that he was behaving unusually around me. It was such an outlandish accusation that I wasn't even sure how to respond. Where on earth was this originating? Being the center of attention has always been Emily's domain. My parents adore her. She's the quintessential individual, their favorite child, so I understand that. But to suggest I tried to snatch her fiancé? Even for her, that marked a new low. As I usually do with her dramatics, I tried to dismiss it. I assumed she was simply feeling insecure or anxious for some reason, since we weren't close anyway. The problem is, after that night, things grew peculiar among us all. I didn't think Emily could distance herself any further, but she seemed to be deliberately avoiding me now, even though our closeness was never a given. If I tried to speak with her, she would either act as though she couldn't be bothered or offer one-word replies. During family gatherings, she would cling to Jonathan's side, as if staking her claim. It was ridiculous. Jonathan, however, maintained his composure, acting as if nothing had changed. He remained polite, friendly, and normal in my presence. What truly vexes me, I suppose, is how readily my family appeared to side with Emily. There were subtle hints, but no one ever spoke to me directly. Every time Emily and Jonathan were present, my mother would give me these strange looks. My father, typically quite indifferent, started making more comments about the importance of connections and the necessity of family unity. Everything felt incredibly passive-aggressive. My irritation grew the more I considered it. I've never been one to get entangled in other people's drama, much less my sister's. Why would I suddenly develop an interest in Emily's fiancé when we barely speak outside of family events? It was illogical. My grandparents informed me of Emily's engagement a few months later. Indeed, I wasn't even told that my own sister was getting married. Discovering it from my grandparents felt like a punch to the gut, even if I wasn't exactly anticipating a personalized invitation with hearts and glitter at this point. You know, the kind of moment that confirms your existing beliefs about your family's lack of regard for you. I suppose I had been clinging to a sliver of hope that despite the tension and separation, she would still consider me a part of this significant life event. Hey, we're sisters, right? I thought. We might not be close, but I am still her family. That was clearly too much to expect, though. When I heard about the engagement, I kept quiet to Emily. I initially assumed she might have forgotten to tell me, or that she was simply preoccupied with wedding preparations. For some reason, I was still giving her the benefit of the doubt, even though I realized that sounds foolish. I imagined she would eventually call me or, at the very least, send a last-minute invitation. However, days stretched into weeks, and nothing happened. Total silence. Then, I received an unexpected call from Emily. Since we hadn't genuinely spoken since that odd accusation over Christmas, I must admit I was taken aback when her name appeared on my phone. I answered, attempting to sound casual, as if my own sister hadn't completely overlooked me. After a few awkward minutes of small talk, she delivered the news. I'm not inviting you to the wedding. As I tried to process what she had just said, I fell silent for a moment. Even though I wasn't particularly eager to attend, it still stung to hear her say it aloud. When I asked her why, she provided the most ridiculous explanation. I don't want you there because Jonathan has feelings for you. It will just be uncomfortable. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Indeed, it was beyond belief to me that this was even happening. For starters, Jonathan harbors no affection for me, and even if he did, I wouldn't have interrupted the ceremony to declare my undying love for him. I didn't even want to argue because it was so utterly absurd. I simply hung up after saying, "Have a wonderful wedding and a happy marriage." It didn't genuinely matter to me whether or not I was part of her special day, because I didn't need that kind of turmoil in my life, and to be frank, we weren't close. Emily and I were living in two entirely separate worlds, and I had long since accepted this. However, I simply needed to vent, and perhaps gain some outside perspective. Am I the only one who finds this whole situation crazy? Have any of you experienced something similar? Any guidance would be truly appreciated. Update 1. I must record all of this while it's still vivid in my mind, as yesterday was absolutely wild. Emily's rehearsal dinner descended into complete chaos, and I was somehow drawn into the very center of it. My phone started buzzing relentlessly as I spent a typical Thursday evening curled up with my laptop, working on an assignment. I chose to ignore it initially. Lately, I've become quite good at that. However, in less than 10 minutes, I noticed I had 7 missed calls from my dad. My dad rarely calls more than once. He's the type who assumes you're busy if you don't answer immediately and will try again later. 7 calls, though, there was clearly a significant problem. When I finally answered, he was trembling. He sounded like a person I had never heard before. "Michelle, you must come to the venue immediately," he repeated like a broken record, right now. When I asked what was wrong, he simply replied, "It's about Jonathan and Emily. Just come, please." His voice was so desperate that I was genuinely a little alarmed. But here's the thing. Did they truly expect me to drop everything and rush to their aid after all the turmoil, accusations, and exclusion from the wedding? I told him exactly that. "Remember, Dad, I'm not attending this wedding." Emily was quite explicit about that. "Michelle, please," he pleaded. "Jonathan is unwilling to proceed with the wedding without your presence." That stopped me in my tracks. What? My phone chimed with another call, this time from Mom, before I could fully comprehend that bombshell. She was crying, truly crying, when I switched over. She kept repeating, "Your sister needs you," as if she had forgotten how they had all treated me over the past few months. Listening to her weep about sisterly love and family loyalty when they had been perfectly fine without me until things went wrong felt incredibly strange. Emily then called, her voice fragmented and almost incoherent. Jonathan, it seemed, had arrived at the rehearsal dinner and immediately asked where I was. When Emily informed him I wasn't invited, he became upset, though it was more a quiet disappointment than outright rage. He declared that he couldn't marry someone who would treat their own sister in such a manner, saying this in front of their friends, the wedding party, and both families. Recounting it, Emily sobbed into the phone. He claimed that after observing their treatment of me, he couldn't be a part of a family that would reject someone in that way. I was just like mom and dad, he stated, adding that he didn't want to be associated with such toxic behavior. If I'm being honest, a significant part of me felt vindicated. At last, someone had witnessed what I had endured for years. In fact, someone had spoken up and declared that it was unacceptable. Emily wasn't finished, though. Between sobs, she began outlining an elaborate plan for me to visit the location and explain that there had only been a major misunderstanding and that I was the one who had decided not to attend the wedding, claiming it was entirely my idea. She persisted in repeating, "We can fix this. Simply come and inform Jonathan that you have no intention of attending the wedding. Tell him you were never excluded. Michelle, please, I can't let him go." It was all breathtakingly audacious. It's absurd that after months of me being treated like a man-stealing villain and being explicitly told I wasn't welcome at her wedding because her fiancé might be attracted to me, she wanted me to lie to preserve her relationship after making me feel worthless within my own family. I allowed her to cry on the other end of the line for a long time without uttering a word. Then, as calmly as I could, I said, "I won't lie for you, Emily. You are now facing the repercussions of your choices to disregard me and treat me as though I didn't exist. Fixing it is not my responsibility." "But he'll listen to you," she almost shrieked. "He believes in you." I responded, "Perhaps he trusts me, because I've never given him a reason not to. Perhaps he has doubts about your true character because of anything he perceives in the way you have treated me. In any case, I won't be attending the event, and I won't tell falsehoods to enhance your reputation." She was still complaining when I ended the call. I then made myself a cup of tea, switched off my phone entirely, and sat down to truly reflect on what had just transpired. My phone continued to illuminate with notifications over the course of the following several hours. I checked it and discovered voicemails from my parents, missed calls from Emily's friends, and messages from relatives I hadn't communicated with in years. The entire family seemed to have united to try and coerce me into rectifying Emily's predicament. But what do you know? For the first time in my life, I was absolutely certain that avoiding them was the correct thing to do. Jonathan alone had managed to discern their true nature, not because of anything I said or did, but because of how they treated me. He had reached that conclusion and, to be honest, that felt like the most complete affirmation I could have hoped for. Last night, I went to bed without using my phone, and I slept better than I have in months. For once, let them deal with the consequences of their own actions. I'm finished cleaning up other people's messes and serving as the family scapegoat. My grandparents, who are the only relatives I still communicate with, informed me this morning that Jonathan is not returning calls from Emily or my parents. It appears he has informed his family that the wedding is off indefinitely. My parents are working frantically to mitigate the damage. Emily is distraught, and I'm just sitting here, finally content with my decision to maintain my distance. I realize this is lengthy, but I had to convey it all. I appreciate all the comments on my previous post that affirmed my choice to keep my distance from my family. You were right. Sometimes it's best to step back and let others confront the repercussions of their own behavior. Update 2. Many of you inquired about my younger years and the reasons behind my prolonged estrangement from my family. Since it's a somewhat sensitive story, I didn't delve into it in my first post, but in light of recent events, I believe this is an appropriate moment to share some of it. The challenge is that I struggle with social anxiety. As a child, I always felt that something was amiss with me, but I was never able to articulate it. However, my parents were traditionalists who believed mental health conditions were merely excuses. They would frequently utter phrases like, "You need to toughen up," or "You're just being dramatic." They would label me weak or lazy if I ever exhibited signs of anxiety or a panic attack, as if I were choosing to feel that way. When I reflect, I can identify numerous warning signs. When I was 15, I had a significant presentation for English class. The thought of standing before 30 students was a recipe for a social anxiety episode. I struggled to sleep the night before and felt physically ill on the morning of. I pleaded to stay home and informed my parents. My father's response, "Your nervousness won't cause life to stop. Quit making such a big deal out of everything." I ultimately experienced a severe panic attack in front of the class. My voice began cracking, some children even started giggling, and my hands were shaking so intensely that I couldn't grip my notes. The room seemed to spin, but I was unable to leave. Rather than offering comfort, my mother simply remarked, "See, you made it through. All that drama was pointless." Everything was exacerbated by Emily, who was the epitome of the perfect sister. She was the student body president, the debate team captain, and essentially everything else I could be due to my anxiety. When she hosted large gatherings of her friends, people would comment that I was the peculiar sister who never emerged from her room. I once overheard Emily tell her friends, "Yeah, she's just antisocial. She believes she's too good to socialize with anyone." My life transformed when I was in college. My first semester was a complete meltdown for me. Being away from home, adapting to new social environments, and attempting to manage my anxiety while attending classes became too overwhelming. I recall feeling like I was dying as I sat in my dorm room, gasping for air. My roommate, bless her, who recognized something was deeply wrong, practically dragged me to the college counseling center. The first person who truly listened to me was Dr. Martinez, whom I met there. She didn't urge me to toughen up or dismiss my emotions. Instead, she helped me understand my condition. Dr. Martinez suggested seeing a psychiatrist for a proper diagnosis after a few sessions. When I received that diagnosis of social anxiety disorder, it was like finally giving the monster I'd been battling my entire life a name. It wasn't about seeking attention or being dramatic, as my family had always insisted. It was a legitimate ailment, and more significantly, it was treatable. The treatment sessions opened my eyes. I learned from Dr. Martinez that my family's actions were not only unsupportive, but also purposefully damaging. She gave me advice on establishing boundaries, advocating for myself, and identifying harmful behaviors. At that point, I began to intentionally distance myself from my family. What truly bothers me, though, is that my parents completely rejected my diagnosis when I tried to explain it to them. "These doctors are just trying to make money by labeling everything a disease," my mother genuinely said. "I was merely using big words to justify my antisocial behavior," Emily added, rolling her eyes. I made one final attempt to explain things to them last Thanksgiving, before all of this wedding turmoil began. I had prepared an entire speech on social anxiety, complete with research and figures. "Michelle, when are you going to stop making excuses and start living in the real world?" My dad interrupted me mid-sentence. I came to the realization that they would never change at that point. They would never make an effort to comprehend. They had an unchangeable perception of me as the challenging kid, the dramatic one, the problem, and what do you know, it was strangely liberating to realize that. It made it easier for me to cease looking for their understanding or acceptance. In retrospect, I can see how this pattern directly contributed to the wedding scenario. My parents' hasty acceptance of Emily's story without even questioning it, and Emily's rapid leap to believe I was stealing her fiancé. It's all a part of their long-held belief that I'm the one who causes difficulty and should be managed. Jonathan saw right through this. He observed how they handled me, how they minimized my emotions, and how they used me as the scapegoat for everything, and he called it out for what it was: toxic conduct. In contrast to everyone else in my family's social circle who simply accepted their own version of reality, I suppose I'm attempting to convey that this wedding drama wasn't an isolated incident. It was the result of years of family dynamics in which I was consistently portrayed as the antagonist, the problematic child, and the one who needed to be fixed. Perhaps that's why Jonathan's choice feels so profoundly just to me. Someone else finally noticed what I've been enduring for years. Yes, that is the backstory many of you requested. It clarifies why I'm not in a hurry to make amends right now. I've spent far too many years attempting to change how my family views me, to gain their understanding, and to earn their acceptance. I've concluded that accepting that certain individuals, even members of your family, will never understand or accept you is sometimes the healthiest thing you can do. Update 3. A month has passed since everything went wrong, and I must now reveal the final portion of this tale. At least now I can say that what began as a wedding drama is truly finished, even though it has evolved into something I never could have predicted. Emily lost everything when her wedding was called off. My new phone number was somehow obtained by her, and she shared it with everyone she knew. I was suddenly deluged with hundreds of hateful comments from strangers, her acquaintances, and distant family members. Guilt-tripping and outright intimidation were among the threats. The vandalism followed. Classic Emily, who used to do this to girls she disliked in high school, was the first to leave eggs on my car. She escalated when that failed to elicit the desired response. I can't even recall how many times I discover my mailbox ruined, my car defaced, or my apartment door covered in offensive notes. She cut all 4 of my car tires and left a threatening note in her distinctive handwriting, which was the final straw. My parents consciously chose to disregard Emily's actions throughout all of this. "Girls will be girls," or "you need to be more understanding of your sister's pain," was their standard response to every incident. They dismissed it as Emily just wanting to talk, even after I showed them security camera footage of her attempting to break into my flat. However, I was prepared because of this incredible Reddit community, especially those who suggested that I install security cameras and record everything. I learned from the attorney you recommended that this constituted criminal harassment and vandalism, rather than just family drama. Using witness accounts, video evidence, photographs, and hundreds of threatening messages, we built a solid case. Emily ultimately realized she had gone too far when my lawyer presented our evidence along with a cease and desist notice. Her attempted break-in was captured on security tape, which was especially damaging. She attempted to bargain through her own attorney, stating that if I dropped everything, she would cover the damages. However, I declined. This was about accountability and penalties, not money. The court case proceeded quickly and decisively. Emily was accused of attempted breaking and entering, criminal harassment, and vandalism. She was given a permanent restraining order, required therapy, and a 1-year suspended sentence. Given the deliberate nature of her conduct and the substantial evidence of her escalating behavior, the judge was especially severe. My parents' response to the decision was expected. For destroying your sister's life over a few pranks, they accused me of being callous. In fact, they advised me to just move away if I felt unsafe after I told them that Emily had repeatedly harassed me, damaged my belongings, and attempted to break into my house. I never intended to speak with them again after that. An out-of-court settlement was reached in the civil litigation. In addition to the damages for emotional distress and lost wages, Emily had to pay for all the harm she had caused. Her campaign of harassment on social media has cost me a number of freelancing businesses. More significantly, the settlement included a non-contact clause that prohibits our parents from serving as intermediaries or flying monkeys any longer. According to my lawyer, Emily and my parents' concerns about their reputations played a role in the speedy settlement. It turns out that their concern for the opinions of their country club friends is far greater than their concern for doing the right thing. Typical. Since then, I've relocated to a new apartment in a building that is secure and under constant observation. My social media accounts have been closed down, my contact information has been totally updated, and my clients have been incredibly understanding of the situation. Someone who heard about my circumstances and was impressed by my handling of it even extended an offer of employment to me. The most unexpected result of it all, for the first time in my life, I feel liberated. The expectations and criticisms of my family are not weighing on me. I am no longer the scapegoat. I'm just Michelle, creating my own life according to my own rules. I'm neither the dramatic nor the challenging child. My life was actually altered by the Reddit community who helped me through everything in court. Your recommendations on documentation and security precautions were crucial. When I started to doubt myself, your encouraging remarks kept me going, and your accounts of similar situations made me understand I wasn't alone. Remember that sharing DNA does not give someone the right to mistreat you. If you're dealing with toxic family members, walking away and letting them deal with the fallout from their actions is sometimes the healthiest course of action. It's about establishing limits and demanding respect, not about getting even. With therapy, my social anxiety is improving, but it's still present. It turns out that a lot of it was related to the continuous criticism and gaslighting I experienced as a child. Who would have thought that removing toxic individuals might be such an effective treatment? I will no longer be providing updates now that this phase of my life is genuinely over. I'm concentrating on my education, profession, and creating a new network of chosen family members for support. I want to express my gratitude to everyone who supported me and followed my tale. You gave me the confidence to leave and the strength to advocate for myself. Living well is said to be the best kind of retaliation. The best closure, I would add, is knowing that you have finally advocated for yourself. I'm tired of being used as a scapegoat or victim by others. I've taken control of my life and will never look back. Reddit, thank you for everything and goodbye. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.